good to see you, ZQ.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the studio where the magic happens.
Awesome. Very crazy setup here, if you guys can see.
No, it looks straightforward. I feel like I'm quite used to it now. What happens when you're like a nerd and you still just like having the iteration cycle every month? You're like,
I'm sure.
A good excuse to go shopping. But ZQ, tell us about yourself.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. I really admire your whole podcast. I've been following you for a while, so your whole podcast journey has been something that I felt like needed a lot of dedication and commitment. So excited to be here. Hi everybody, my name is Zhang Quan, or you can call me ZQ or ZQ. I'm the co-founder and COO of Sleek EV. Sleek EV is one of the fastest growing electric motorcycle companies in Southeast Asia. We have now grown, over the past 2 years, we've grown to about 90 people, and we have put about more than 3,000 bikes on the road. And I've been in this industry for about 5 years now, out of which the last 2 years I've spent building our operations HQs in Bangkok. So I travel back and forth right now. I station mostly in Bangkok, but I come back during the weekends. And it's also because outside of work, I'm a father of one, a lovely daughter who's turning 2 soon. So that's how I juggle my time.
Amazing. Lots to get into that. What were you like as a university student? Were you like a rebellious entrepreneur type? Were you a nerdy person? Were you playful? What was the deal? What was your plan in university?
I'm not sure whether that's a question that I can answer for myself, but definitely not the nerdy type. I've never been the nerdy type of guy. So in university, I've always focused on more what's outside. Because in school, I felt quite restricted, right? Especially in university where most people are trying to get good grades. And so all the conversations around university, when I was in there, is mostly, okay, how do you beat the bell curve? How do you do well in class? And it got quite boring for me. So I was looking more for outside of school professionally. What can I do? What can I look for? How can I improve myself? Or how can I apply what I learned in university outside? So I guess I was more of like the searching for opportunities, doing a lot of things outside of school, and then that kind of person.
And basically after that you started doing some work and travel and so forth. So what was your early career decisions like?
So when I was in school, I was already part-timing outside. In university, I think on the second year or third year, I was in Klook. I joined Klook when they first started in Singapore. And I went in as an intern. And subsequently, I managed to schedule all my classes to like Fridays so that I can work on Mondays to Thursdays. So that was what happened. I went from an intern to more like a part-time basis role. I was there for about slightly more than a year. And I got an opportunity to go to this program called NUS Overseas Colleges, or NOC in short. So I went to, that opportunity brought me to New York for a year. And over there is also a working experience, so I love it. I was in New York working with a very small startup, or actually we started the company when I was there. It was 3 other co-founders who were from Spotify, the early Spotify founding team who came to New York to set up the Spotify US kind of a branch. And after they were done with their stint, they came out, they started doing their own stuff. And when I joined them, we built something new. So it was 1 year over there. I learned a lot because it was very much bootstrapped and it was very heavily tech focused. It was 3 of them who were coders and me who were trying to do everything else, like designing, marketing, growth, business, everything else. And we didn't have an office. So that whole 1 year, I was just in Starbucks. And not to say anything bad about the program or whatsoever, but I wasn't paid that well because it was an internship program. So I couldn't afford to buy Starbucks every day. So what I did was I just sneak into Starbucks, say hi to the guys, and then I would just go to the site without a drink and started working every single day. And that was my whole 1 year. Great experience. I learned a lot about technology, about how to build an application or software side of things. And that was my stint in New York. And then I came back, graduated from school. That's my kind of my school plus working journey.
And then what did you decide to do after returning back from NOC?
Okay, so entrepreneurship has been in my mind since I was young. I think it's influenced by many things. First of all is I believe, this is my personal opinion, that I believe entrepreneurship is like the toughest or the greatest challenge that one can achieve, right? Or the greatest achievement. And to me, I'm attracted to it. I want to do it. I think maybe partly because I'm a sportsman and the competitiveness of me is thinking that I can do things better than other people just attracted me to that concept of entrepreneurship. And of course, also partly because of family. My parents were both entrepreneurs, and when I grew up, the talk around friends and family has always been around this topic. So there's something that I can relate to. Yeah, so that's why I've always wanted to do something like that. When I graduated, I took a break, and that break was where I realized, or I got my hands into the whole EV, or I would say ESG concept.
Yeah.
I took a 6 months break after I graduated. I went to the US to travel around the US in a van. And in that van, I actually gutted out. Okay, so me and my then girlfriend, now wife, we gutted out the van. We bought a van, small van, gutted it out. We put solar panels, batteries, and all that. I'm not an engineer, by the way. And I learned through YouTube. Right? I'm a YouTube engineer.
Yeah.
And from there, that 6 months, I've not used electricity outside of the van. And we charged our phones, we had cameras, we had laptops, we had a fridge, right? And that made me realize, hey, if a small house can survive on 2 small little solar panels and just 1 batteries, most people can do it actually to get energy from the sun or from resources out there. And that got me thinking in this industry. And at first, I wanted to venture into solar panels because that was the main component of the van, right? And I started tinkering with ideas around solar, but then the business idea didn't really work out in Singapore because I was in Singapore. It didn't work out in the sense of the model, the business model of how to deploy solar panels or how do you make money out of that, the limited roof space, etc. So I consulted a few friends in this industry, and while I was in this idea, I was being invited by a friend for a stint in Bangkok. So somehow I ended up in Bangkok for a couple of months there. He was doing another social media commerce company, and I was helping him in that job. That was where I met my co-founder. So while I was still figuring out with all the solar and the batteries and things like that, I met my co-founder who was in the EV space. And that kind of all clicked. I met him. He was my age. He also studied in a Singapore international school in Bangkok. So he clicked with Singaporeans. And that was how all this story started. We look at the market, we examine it for a good couple of months before we decided to come together and do something.
Yeah, amazing. No, I think it's such a great way to show how you explored entrepreneurship from the perspective of being an employee, an intern, and then eventually navigated your way into that space. And I think what's interesting is that you found yourself making a decision to do 3 things, right? So one, with this startup is obviously enter electric vehicles.
Yes.
2 is that you decided to find a co-founder who is based in Thailand and going after the Thai market, which is number 2. And of course, number 3 is you also decided to split your responsibilities with him as a co-founder. So lots to unpack in all 3 of them. I guess the first question I have for you is, it is common, but not very common for a Singaporean founder to work in a Southeast Asian country, so Indonesia or Thailand. So a lot of folks will, like you, partner with a local co-founder, which makes sense. But how did you feel about that? Is it scary? Because you also now spend 5 days a week in Thailand as well. Were you like, you know what? Maybe I can find a Singaporean co-founder and take a Singaporean virtual problem? I don't know, online gambling.
Great question, great business, right?
Exactly. You can do it from home in pajamas.
Man. I think, definitely it's difficult. That approach had occurred to me many times. Right? Family is here. And also partly because of the nagging from the family. Everybody's like, why do you have to do this? Why do you have to go over there for so long? Can't you just do it here? But the truth of the matter is, since first of all, the fundamental is that the business is there. Right? We started off the business there because the opportunity was bigger there. So I didn't intend to want to start something in Singapore with that idea. Right? I looked at it, actually, believe me. I looked at it, met some people at LTA, discussed about some topics, but it was a very different market altogether. So we decided, you know what, we let it ride out first in Singapore, and there's no need to build a team here yet. And so being in Thailand is, first of all, the business is there. I have to be there in order to communicate closer to our team, closer to the market. And to me, it was more of a commitment as well. Like, I had to understand the market, so I had to be there. I can't leave everything to my co-founder, right, then I would not be a co-founder. So coming from a different country, there's already a gap that I have to learn a lot from him.
Right.
I have to learn a lot from the market. And I think relocating or partially relocating myself there would help speed up the whole
Of course.
process. And I was right. So
Yeah.
I'm like more in depth into the Thai market now.
Yeah.
And that helped everything, or helped my operations, my personal operations as well.
Yeah. And that makes sense. Obviously, you're pursuing this opportunity. Why Thailand and why EVs? Because you could be some version of this, right? You could be Indonesia EV, and then you could be maybe.
I'm half Indonesian, by the way.
Oh, okay. So yeah, exactly. So it'll be easier even, right? You're like, oh, now I can see my distant extended family.
Yes.
And there's another big market as well.
Correct.
And there are some EV startups like Maka Motors.
Yes,
It was
yes.
previously on the podcast as well. So they're going after that space to some extent, two wheels.
Yeah.
Like, why Thailand? Why EV? Why is this segment here?
Okay, so it's partly 2 points. One is strategically and also opportunistically, right? Opportunistically, I was there and I met my co-founder. So it's easier to have somebody local to help you. So that's one thing. And another thing is we looked at the market across Southeast Asia. Singapore, we set it aside because Singapore is a really different market. So we look at the three biggest markets, Indonesia, Vietnam, as well as Thailand. And at the point of time, we look at different industries as well, how technology was adopted in each different country, how new products, although new, but it's the same segment. Motorcycles are motorcycles.
Right.
So we got to look at things equivalent to that. And we realized Thailand has actually been the fastest growing out of all these kind of new tech.
Right.
It is partly, it's partly because of the social factor there. I'm not sure how do I put it into statistics, but most of the time when Thai people buy something, they share with their friends. And their friends will eventually be influenced to buy that something or to use that service. So I think in terms of adoption of new technology, it's a very close-knit network effect where it will spread pretty quickly. Whereas like for Indonesia, it's more segmented because the markets are very different in each region. So there's a lot of islands, people are split across different places, so mostly concentrated around the big cities. Bangkok is also a big city and mostly concentrated around the big cities, but overall adoption is much faster there. So we thought, okay, since this is new, a motorcycle in EV sense, in a petrol sense, is going to be a motorcycle in their eyes.
Yeah.
So it has to be something that they can adopt fast enough that gives us an edge. And we decided on the Thai market, which I believe a lot of Chinese people had the same kind of conclusion. But thanks to the Thai government, it blocked a lot of them from coming in.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting because you're starting to talk about something which is obviously we're talking about EVs in general in terms of adoption, but also talking about country selection.
Yes.
And I think you're talking about the process where you went through that logic path. And I think what's interesting is you contrasted Thailand and Indonesia. So let's talk about some of them you mentioned. So one, like you said, is Indonesia is a larger market, but it's more fragmented because it's different islands and you can't drive a motorcycle across islands. So whereas Thailand is one block of
land.
And of course, what's interesting is also you're talking about like the social norms and the rural-urban distribution is quite important. Of course, I think the third thing, of course, is GDP per capita, right? So Singapore's about 80,000 GDP per capita. Thailand is about 5 times lower. And then Indonesia is 2 times lower than that of Thailand, right? So what do you think about that? Is that GDP per capita also important for EV adoption, or how do you think about that?
Okay, it is. It affects their purchasing power, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And also that relates to their adoption of mobile technology. Their internet speed is fast. Actually, I think they're the fastest in Southeast Asia. I think there's 1 year that they beat out Singapore. A lot of them have mobile phones. I think percentage-wise is pretty high. I'm not sure exactly what, but it's very dense. So what that means is they are also exposed to information easily. And Facebook is one of the biggest market of Facebook is also in Thailand. So a lot of times where new technology is being shared over like social, even the rural people get that information and they can make that purchasing decision to purchase that service or goods. So I think that's what made it more spread faster for new technologies. But you also have to communicate to the Thais because it's very nuanced. It's a very nuanced market, which of course my co-founder is better than me at that. And he handles the marketing side.
When you think about EVs, obviously you make decisions between 4 wheels, 2 wheels, I think that's one side. Then obviously Thailand also has a history of manufacturing for cars and some assembly as well. So can you talk to me about some of that product thinking through?
Why 2 wheels? Capital, difficulty, I guess. That's the
good,
more practical way to look at it. So 4 wheels, we just didn't think we can compete in four wheels.
Yeah.
So we eventually just look at other automotive choices, right?
Yeah.
And also, we did. Although I say that we didn't think from top up, we actually think from what can make the most impact.
Right.
And motorcycles was the most proliferous vehicle across Thailand and Southeast Asia.
Right.
And so we thought, hey, it's been how many decades people have been using ICE motorcycles or petrol motorcycles. It's been polluting the road. Bangkok, Chiang Mai has bad air and all that. There are studies that says that's mostly because of automotive, right? And they produce so many vehicles there because they are automotive capital in Southeast Asia. And we thought, okay, why not we change this? Right? If people are already using all these vehicles, if we make them switch, that will make a huge impact to not only their lives, but also to the environment and to the air. Although I must say, most people don't really care about that in Thailand, or in fact in Southeast Asia. It's what we tell to our investors, but when we tell to the people, it's second thought, third thought maybe.
So what's the first and second thought from your
It's
perspective?
always affordability.
Yep.
It's always affordability, whether I can survive, whether I can bring my family out on this vehicle, and whether it can last long.
Yeah.
Because money is important to me. I don't want to spend something that is going to break in the next 2 months and I lose that money. It's hard earned.
Yeah.
Stability is key. It's really key. Is that our competitor, Honda, another two-wheeler company, everybody knows Honda, right?
Course,
they have 80% market share in Thailand. And the main reason is because they are very stable.
Yeah.
They are a commodity.
Yeah.
And when you buy the product, you know what you're getting, you know how long it lasts, you know what you can sell it for. It's something like an iPhone, right? And it gives them a sense of security.
Right.
When I spend $1, I know I can get 80 cents even if I can't pay for it. Or if things break down, I can find shops to repair.
Right.
So they build it out over a period of 3 decades, 30 years, 40 years, right? And that is what rooted them into this market strongly. And that is what is difficult to break.
Yeah. And I think you're making a certain set of decisions going from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this point B, of course, is you're thinking through the product market fit. Can you share about how you design the product? Obviously, you're designing a product to be cheap, to be reliable.
Yes.
ESG is number 3, number 4,
Yes,
number
yes,
5.
yes.
So what does it mean for a bike? Because technically they said I could buy a Honda.
Yes.
I could also buy some Chinese bikes.
Yes,
I could buy an electric bicycle.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of different ways to achieve that product
product.
attributes. So how did you go about designing your product? Yeah.
Okay, first of all, we got to understand what the user needs, right? And we are talking about motorcycle, meaning something that can run on the road, plated, registered, and all that. So it has to be higher speed, right?
Yeah.
It has to be bigger size.
Yeah.
So the issue with electric motorcycle, even today, is that no one can get price parity with the petrol counterpart. First of all, because there's no scale.
Yeah.
Second of all, because China has not been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
China has been doing the low-speed motorcycles for a long time.
Yeah.
So they have the supply chain for the smaller bikes, the mopeds, right?
Yeah.
Those that go 25 or maybe 45 kilometers per hour.
Right.
And when you tell them you want to do something bigger, like the 90 km, 100 km per hour bikes, they can't do it. Only the motorcycle companies can do it,
Right.
Which they have to adjust
Yeah.
and produce for you, which they don't want to because they are selling a lot of petrol motorcycles.
Yeah.
Anyway, basically you have to first of all know what the user needs, and then you build from there. But the problem is you have to sacrifice something. So if you do a product that is like for like with petrol, barring the range, because range you can never compete with an ICE petrol motorcycle, right? So putting that together, if you were to have a high-speed motorcycle, a big battery, something durable and big size, your price is eventually going to be higher than ICE counterpart.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to lower your spec, or you sacrifice on certain components, and then you compete in price.
Right.
So there's never a middle ground.
Yeah.
I think the middle ground is being achieved by being resourceful, and to also what we did is we don't do everything by ourselves,
right,
because that will increase the cost by a lot. We find a middle ground where some of the key components we do it ourselves, and those that are not key, we outsourced it. So given our business right now, for example, the design of the bike, the design is exclusively ours in Thailand, but it's not. We didn't buy the mold. We don't invest $1 million to design something that we don't know whether can sell or not. So we started off with selecting the best designs for the country, and then the internals we do it ourselves. So for example, the motor, the controller, the VCU, or what drives the bike. And the reason why we select that route is because we need to control the internals to do after sales, to give that form of stability, which I mentioned earlier. If you were to buy things off the shelf, it's very easy. So you can go to a Chinese supplier, say, oh, you know what, I like this. It's cheap. I want to buy it. Just help me up the spec, increase the motor size to fit the Thai market. You can do that. But when you have problems, you have to feed it back to them because your engineers or your technicians will not know what's behind the bike. And what happens is that they take a long time. You take a long time to feedback, and the whole structure or ecosystem will break down, which was what happened to us before we started Sleek. We were a distributor, so we were just selling EV motorcycles. And as a dealer, we faced that issue because like customers face problem, and we can't solve it for him. And we're like, hold on, we'll get parts for you, we'll get information for you, and then the information comes back 2 months later, and the bank tells us he has already defaulted on his payment because he said, I can't even use this product. Why am I paying for it? So it will collapse the whole kind of ecosystem because it starts to fall, and then the bank will start to stop financing these vehicles. People start to not be able to afford, and so I think the core that we are building in terms of product is to find what is important to do, then we do and we control, and what is not important we outsource first, and eventually when it becomes important we will do it in-house.
I think one tricky part, of course, is that you mentioned obviously the Chinese several times now, right? Obviously Shenzhen and the whole area, the manufacturing, and it's hard to beat. Like you said, solar cells on your van was definitely from China as well, so the scale. So how do you make a decision between which components to partner with and outsource to them and bring in, maybe also collaborate with them on upping the specs, versus which parts that you choose to like design in-house?
Okay, so it has got to do with timing as well. So best is to go as high upstream as possible. So right to the manufacturer that produced that component. What we do is that at the start it was difficult because their business was good. So we didn't have MOQ requirements to fit their requirements. But the market started to become bad in their core markets, which is like US, Europe, maybe even South America. And they started calling me because when I was there, our first generation product for Sleek is off the shelf. I'll just put it out there, is where we faced those problems where I couldn't help too much in after sales and all that. While we are selling that product, we are developing our own powertrain. And from there, I went all the way up to all these manufacturers to produce the motor for us, the controller for us. And when that happens, mostly people will reject. I need MOQ of 5,000 units, 10,000 units, because we have a lot of requirements, right? We want certain kind of design, certain kind of specifications, certain kind of heat requirements as well, the heat dissipation requirements. So they're like, if in order for us to do all this, you have to pay a big sum, right? And like a couple months down the road, they started calling me, saying, actually, you know what you want to do? We can help you do. Business is bad. They were quite honest about it. Business is bad. We can sell you these parts and the rest you can buy yourself, which means they don't make that much money, but they're happy to do it with us. And I think my story kind of aligns with them, which I shared honestly that if you want to have a customer in Southeast Asia, they will definitely go the route that I went towards you. Because if they were to buy the whole thing from you off the shelf, they will never make it. They'll never make it in Southeast Asia. The price is just too high. Right? So I say they will eventually wake up and they'll come back to you with the same idea. So unless you're talking about somebody who just wants to burn or wants to do a different type of business model, then I can't answer for that. So they align with my story, and when they call me back, I'm like, okay, time to work. And like timing helped us a bit. And then we went forward to do that.
And I think what's interesting is that you also collaborated with other partners in the Thai market as well, not just the Chinese, obviously, on the parts and assembly components, but also of the Thai counterparts. Could you share a little bit more about those partnerships?
Thai counterparts, right now, we do not have a big pool of them. Of course, the tires and some other components, we use the Thai based on regulation requirements. But we're looking to bring more into local Thai production. So Thailand has very good manufacturing capabilities in terms of motorcycles, cars, automotive in general. Their quality is higher and the price point is also higher. So for us to use more Thai components is mainly we need some scale. We need scale so that while we transit, we can maintain the same cost structure and yet increase our quality. Because on the Chinese side, you can increase the quality, but then they'll get you to pay more. Right? And it will be more troublesome because most of their, for example, there's quality number one, A or B, right? And A is the better one. Most of their focus is on B, for example, for cost effectiveness, cost efficiency. So they are selling to everybody number B, right? And then you say you want A, their focus on you will be much smaller. Although they're going to charge you for it, they can do it for you, but the focus will be smaller. So whereas Thailand has always been doing A, and then their main focus is in A, and they just want to produce A for you. But their price point is already set.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is that you're also thinking about the charging network
Yes.
as well, where you also have local Thai
Yes.
partners as well,
Yes,
because you're not going to change out the EV charging infrastructure, power infrastructure yourself as well. So how does that work for that side? Yeah.
Charging is very important. Infrastructure is the key towards adoption or part of the ecosystem with this EV adoption. Cars are much better off because all the cars have a regulation that supports it. So charging for cars, for example, in Singapore, Type 2 is a requirement. So all cars produced have Type 2, right? But bikes is a bit messy. There are all kinds of connectors. There's people doing swapping, people doing charging. There's too many things. So users will have to choose based on company, based on product. Like I believe in this company, so I choose their product or price point or whatsoever. They don't have access to all choices because all choices will have different charging station, different swapping station. So for us, we are trying to build something that is of a standard. So we share this outside. We said, you know what, our batteries are from CATL. Why don't you guys work with them? We are building the charging station. We are building the infrastructure. We work with our investor, who is PTTOR, and we try to build it with them. And while that is being laid out, we want people to use it, right? So that it becomes a standard where everyone can follow. That is a very steep hill to climb. We have to be the one that showed the example that it can be done. But for now, I think it's still quite difficult. Because everybody wants to do things themselves. Right? They don't want to be tied into something. They don't want to use other people's stuff. And most of all, everybody have their own idea. So a bunch of people believe in swapping. A bunch of people believe in charging infrastructure. A bunch of people believe in charging at home. So the plugs are all different. The business models are all different. The companies are all different. So it's messy in that regard.
What do you believe is the future? For us, our home, we just installed a charger for the car. If you're parked at night, you might as well charge it.
Yes.
So if you ask me, my head says at-home charging is the end state. But I don't know. What do you think? I mean, if it's Thailand for 2 wheels, what do you think? Yeah?
I actually agree with you. At-home charging is going to be the base case for most people because of the habit. Most of the time, like your mobile phone, you use it out there. If you need it for emergency, you find some power bank. Or if not, then you bring it home to charge. You treat your motorcycle or your vehicle the same way, right? Most of the people that buys an electric vehicle can utilize it for the day without a need to charge outside. Having an ecosystem or infrastructure out there gives them a sense of security so that in any case, I can still charge. But my personal habit will be I will go home and charge it. It could be also because of convenience. If my home is in a condo, I have to bring the batteries up, then I will just pay more. Out down the street, I have a charger. When I'm having lunch, I just charge it. Every time I'm taking a break, I just charge. And that will keep me going forever. Another point is that most people travel within the city can survive. But if they want to do cross-country, so that will be another challenge. And cross-country is similar to car, right? Where you have to build in between interstates or inter-provinces where you need charging stations along the way. I think that's a totally different story altogether. But on a general use case, infrastructure is still a must for people to adopt, but end up most of them are going to charge at home. On a base case, and then when they're out there, they'll still use the charging stations.
Okay, so if you think that's the end state, then obviously the people benefit the most would be power companies, right?
Yes.
Just because they no longer go through a gas transportation, bunker, gas station.
Which is why they are trying to convert everything into more electricity provider type of format. Gas will still stay for a while. It's not going to change. China took maybe 10 years, and now it's 50%. So I guess Southeast Asia is probably going to take longer than that for that conversion. But yeah, they're all getting into it, making their investment strategies more into the energy players, motorcycle companies like us, and also changing their station format. You can start to see.
I think one question I have for you then as a result is, obviously we've been talking about internal combustion engines, ICE, we've been talking about electric vehicles, but switching to a personal note, could you share a little bit about what your personal story about a time that you have been brave?
Oh, wow. Okay, it relates to Sleek, right? Going to Thailand is not too much of a brave act to me. It's more of a commitment. I think it is the entirety of this entrepreneurship journey. And it's not just myself that is brave. I think my family is the one that is also brave to be able to join in this journey with me, because I've always, like, when I share with my friends, I say that this is my choice, but it's not their choice, right? My wife, my kid have to go through this together with me.
Yeah.
But I was the one that chose it. So why they're the ones suffering? And I had to, in order to grow this company, I had to take on debts. There were many times that, just to share, there's people who I owe money to come knocking on my door, looking for my wife when I'm not around. And that is quite scary. To me, it's quite scary. I don't think I've really shared this. But yeah. So this entire journey is not easy. It's not easy. And if you ask me, is it a brave option? I think I'm still attracted to it, but it's definitely something brave that my family have to go through together with me.
Yeah, no, you like said you have a 2-year-old child, a wife at home taking care of the kid.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a big step for you to choose to continue to be an entrepreneur. But you also mentioned that your parents were also entrepreneurs, both of them. And then you were also a kid when they were being entrepreneurial. So did you feel abandoned by that? Did you feel like you were being compromised? I'm just curious, since you feel that about your own child now. I'm wondering if you felt the same about your parents or
Wow, it's a good way to put it. A vast difference is that because they are in Singapore, so like they'll take me to their small shop and then I can be there. And then my grandparents took care of me most of the time. So there was still some form of connection there. Now I'm not sure because I'm away. I'm like a weekend dad, right? Personally, I don't feel that great about it, but it's the best I can do. So every day I do video calls. I try to connect with my daughter as much as possible. But I think there's some slight difference because when I was a kid, I was still in Singapore. My parents are in Singapore, so we still get to connect. And as a kid, you have nothing much to do, so they always like come to the shop, just sit there and play. So I was still involved.
You're just doing your homework in the corner of the shop.
Exactly. Or maybe not even doing my homework, just playing.
No, I think it's interesting. A lot of people feel like, hey, I think there's two ways to think about it, which is I'm going to become a dad or mom, so I really should put my entrepreneurship dreams on the hold for this one side. And I think there's the other group of people who are like, I am an entrepreneur and I should put my childhood plans and I should defer that for a few more years so that I can focus my work and so on and so forth. So what do you think about that? Do you think you can be a founder and parent at the same time? How would you think about that?
So for me, definitely I believe so because I'm already doing it. I have no concrete advice for it. I don't recommend either way. I think there's no right or wrong in choosing what you want to do with your life. But as an entrepreneur, when things come, you'll figure a way out. That's how, or maybe in general as a person, right? When I have to do this and I have a kid, I just naturally figure things out. I think weekends, I just try to spend all my time with them, with my family, and then weekdays, I stay focused. I think that's the best we can do, is to find a solution. But when you make a decision, you consider don't consider too much. You consider too much, in the end, you just don't do anything, right? So if you are an entrepreneur right now and you consider to have a kid, go through whatever you think would affect your life, and when you make the decision, I don't think you'll regret. Just find a way to go ahead with it.
Are you happy to do both at the same time? So I'm because that's interesting, right? Because you're saying like there's some compromises.
Yes.
But I'm just curious, you're hinting at it, right? You're like, but you're actually happy to do both?
I am actually very happy. Right now she's 2 years old, so I've been a dad for 2 years. Right? And being an entrepreneur and being a dad actually made me better in both. I'm not sure if you can relate because you're a dad as well, but being a father to a kid, to a child, allows me to adjust my emotions, my patience, and that helped me regulate in terms of career as well. My behavior at work, my professionalism at work, how I operate, how I think, and it translates back as well. And so I think a lot of stuff are interchangeable, and I really feel like I've grown. I really feel like I've grown in both aspects, and that's why I really like it. I believe it was a good thing that happened. But I definitely wish I had more time in the world to spend with both components, my work as well as my family. But it's limited, right? 24 hours a day for everyone. So I just do my best.
It's interesting because being a founder seems like a dream come true.
Yes.
And being a parent also is a dream come true.
Yes.
It's just that you have two dreams at the same time.
I can't rank them.
It's rank them.
It's difficult.
And like I said, it's also geographically dispersed. So I think it makes it hard to have both at the same time.
My wife would rank them. My wife would say that I put work first. I have no arguments. I'm sure most.
Obviously, like you said, as your child grows up, there are more opportunities to travel with you, and you'll also be able to maybe expand to the rest of Southeast Asia as well. well.
Yes,
So
yes.
I think it can go both ways. One last question I have is obviously, I'm curious, obviously you watch your parents grow up to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Did your parents want you to be an entrepreneur, or they were like, please don't be an entrepreneur?
Okay, it's a funny story. When we were younger, they'll encourage us.
Yeah.
Right? Think of some ideas, what you want to do, you can try it out. And while we are in this journey, they start to see that it affects our health, start to see that it affects our time. They're like, why don't you consider the corporate role? You can also do well there. You see, people are comfortable. And I'm like, wait a minute, you. First of all, when we were younger, you told us adventurous, go out there, try different things. And then now you're telling us to do the other way. I think it's the different lens that you look at. When they were in that shoes, they were more like, oh, the opportunities are here.
Yeah.
You guys should try it. I want my kids to also follow in my footsteps. And there is more control as an entrepreneur. You know what you like to do. You can follow your passion. Whereas now, they look at the news. They're like, wow, this high-flying banker, this high-flying CEO doing very well in corporate and buying a GCB and things like that. And they're like, you are so hardworking. You can also do that, right? You can also achieve. And I'm like, wait, hold on. So I think it's a different lens. As they grow up, they also look at us, seeing that we have no time for family. They're like, why you travel so much? You're not eating, you lose so much weight, go to hospital and things like that. So they adjust. And they're like, to me, I have disagreements with that because I'm like, this is a personal choice, right? If I were to go into a corporate route, I would probably use the same energy if I want to excel, right? And that will result in the same kind of... It doesn't mean that when I go to corporate, I'm like, oh, okay, that's all. I'm just gonna take a salary and chill. So I think it's a misconception.
So I have to ask you, do you think you would recommend to your child to be an entrepreneur?
Oh my goodness. I'm a millennial dad, so I guess just let them have their choice.
What?
Let them have their choice.
You let them have their choice?
I don't want to force them. I try to maybe gear them into things that is more practical.
Like a doctor?
Don't need to be a doctor or a lawyer or a typical strong Asian kind of push professional. But first of all, they have to do something that they like. Even entrepreneurship or corporate, right? I believe it's very hard. Either ways, it's very difficult. And when you just don't like what you're doing, I think a few months in, you'll quit. It's very normal. Like, the stories always come when people don't like their job. And they just quit, lor. Quit to find something else, and they always want to find new opportunities, find new experiences. And deep down, it's because they just hate the things that they're doing. Like an accountant, even if I'm an accountant and I go into accountant job, I hate doing accounting, but I'm stuck because I'm accounting trained. And I feel it's very sad. If that happens, I'll probably say, go and study something else quickly and then just pivot. Find something you like to do. Then it can last longer. We are going to work for 50 years of our life, 30, 40 at least. So it's a long time.
Makes sense. So your answer is follow your dreams.
Follow your dreams.
Passion.
Follow your dreams. Politically correct answer.
It's politically correct. It's like,
but if they have an idea, then I will try to
support. So if they want to be an entrepreneur,
I will encourage them not to be fearful of entrepreneurship. That's for sure.
Gotcha. But if they want to be entrepreneurial, you'll support them.
Yes. No, the reason why I say that is because I feel like in Singapore, most people grow up and not want to be an entrepreneur. Like my friends around me, most of them just want to find a banking job. Or maybe because I was in NUS business. So NUS business, a great bunch of them went to banking or finance.
70 to 80% want to go into finance.
A lot of them. Pays well, good kind of prestige and all that. So I think it's okay. But the environment will push them towards that kind of thinking, right? So if she somehow says, hey, I want to do something, I would give her my support. I won't say, you know what, don't forget it.
Forget your dreams.
It's tough and you'll crack under pressure.
Okay, so you won't be like your parents now asking you to slow down.
Try it first. Actually, when you're young, just try it.
Ken, on that note, thank you so much for coming and sharing the
so
three
much.
things I got from this conversation. First of all, thank you so much for sharing about your early kind of like career search, the fact that you were not very studious student, not doing your math homework, going through that process to take on many entrepreneurial experiences at high growth startups and eventually landing with a Thai co-founder to explore the EV market. So I thought that was fantastic for that search. Secondly, thanks so much for sharing about the Thai and the EV market. I think there's a lot of depth about how we think about the Thai as a market versus Indonesia and Singapore. We talk about why 2 wheels versus 4 wheels. We talk about the difference between like in-house versus outsource.
Yep.
And we also talk a little bit about like the battery and charging versus the assembly of the product itself.
Yep.
And also we talked about like the ecosystem and the service, after service support as well. So lots of different dimensions about the business. And lastly, thanks so much for sharing about your own personal life in terms of your own dreams, your own parents being entrepreneurs, your own parents asking you to be adventurous and then dialing it back afterwards, but also your own choice to become a father and parent, and the fact that you actually are pursuing both dreams at once, and some of the compromises and trade-offs, but also some of the enjoyability and advice that you would have. On that note, thank you so much for sharing.
Most welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much, Jeremy.